Kia ora, e te whānau. Lovely to have you all here, and so happy to have you along today. Today we're talking about raising resilient teens, and I expect you're here because you have a teenager in your life who is dear to you and who you love, and we're going to look at how best raise the teens in our lives. I'm going to start with the question, and Kat, I'm just going to ask you to mute your volume on Zoom. I'm going to ask the question, how do we raise resilient teens? Do we toughen them up or do we soften them up? Do we toughen them up or do we soften them up? It's a big question and it's going to frame a lot of what we're talking about tonight. But I'm going to start by asking the question, what is resilience? Well, when I ran a Facebook ad for this event tonight, somebody put in the comments section, tell them just to get on with it like our parents did to us. And I thought that was just an excellent quote to bring us into this whole conversation. Let's look at what the Oxford Dictionary says about resilience. It says the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness. Let's just have a little think about what toughness means. So toughness implies not showing a lot of emotion, the ability to get on with what needs to be done without making a fuss. This is a really common understanding of resilience, and it's a real Kiwi attitude. Tell them to get over it and get on with it. Don't bellyache about how tough it is. Don't indulge your teens' emotion around difficult experiences. Just push it to one side and get on with it. So should we just toughen them up and leave them to it? Or should we handle it on our own? In my younger days as a parent, I took the tough it out approach with my first child, and it didn't turn out very well. So when she was younger, I was really quick to move her on from her tears, distract her. You'll be right, I'd say. But the problem was she had a lot of emotions. It seemed that everything upset her. Every little thing triggered her. She didn't want to wear these shoes. She didn't want to wear those clothes. She didn't want to eat this food. I'd hurry it up. Come on, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. It's okay. We started school and she was really clingy. And so I was tough about it. I'd say, you'll be fine. Just, I have to leave you now. And I'd sometimes just push her into the teacher's hands, who would hold on to her, and I'd walk away. Sometimes she'd be crying and the teacher would have to hold her. After a while, she stopped needing me so much because she found a good friend at school. I've got a memory of one story in those days when I used to bike her to school every day, and I was always in a bit of a hurry and she was always going too slow, and sometimes she just would stop and go on strike and fold her arms and stand in the middle of the road and refuse to bike. And I probably did this a few times, but I remember this one time when I said, fine, I'll see you later. And I biked on and I biked round the corner and I kind of hid behind a hedge and just waited for her to come. But the problem with my daughter is when you enter into a battle of the wills, she always seemed to come out on top. So eventually I sheepishly crawled back round the corner and walked down the road. There she was crying on the footpath, and there was a dad from the school there, and he looked down at her and he looked up at me and said, "You're such a mean mum." And I think at the time I was like, you've got no idea what I'm dealing with here. But it really hit me between the eyes, and it's stuck with me ever since. You're such a mean mum. Is that the way that I really want to parent? Well, things got worse. She toughened up. She stopped making such a big fuss about everything. And stuff started happening at school that was really bad news, but I didn't know because she wasn't talking to me. Eventually it got to a crisis point, and I had the principal and the DP frequently talking to me and saying, what's going on? This is just too much for us to handle. And I was left with a decision. Do I leave her in school, or do I take her out and homeschool her, quit my career as a teacher, and try and work out and get to the bottom of what's going on? So I brought her home, and life became less about being in a constant hurry and more about sitting by the fire with my arm round her, reading her stories. And I began to listen, and stories began to come out that curdled my blood about what had been happening at school for her. That was when my soft parenting began. So I kind of feel like I've made I've had 8 years of this tough parenting approach, which really didn't work. And I've spent the last 10 years trying to untangle what I set up in those first 8 years and just using a lot of softness and gentleness. But look, evidence shows that those teens who had a tough it out parenting approach instead of kind, supportive parenting actually don't end up as highly productive members of society as we think they will. They end up doing a lot worse in adult life. So I'd like to question the idea of resilience as tough. Could a soft teen be a resilient teen? Maybe we need a different definition of resilience. Gordon Neufeld defines resilience this way: the capacity to return to optimal functioning or to thrive under duress. Who's Gordon Neufeld? Well, Gordon Neufeld is a Canadian psychologist focused on a relational approach to parenting, and he's the psychologist I came across 10 years ago when I did my 180-degree turn in parenting. That's when my heart started to become soft, and I began to learn how to soften up my daughter's heart. I've been studying courses through the Neufeld Institute for nearly 10 years, and I'm now a faculty intern. So I'm in the senior leadership team there. So just to say that most of the ideas that follow on from here are based on ideas from Neufeld theory and from the Neufeld Institute. So Dr. Neufeld says resilience is the capacity to return to optimal functioning or to thrive under duress. He talks about the power of the bounce back, and there's a real emphasis on optimal functioning. So what is optimal functioning? According to Gordon Neufeld, it's being full of feeling, full of rest, and full of play. Not pushing down feelings, not appearing tough, not appearing calm and in control of the situation. Full of feeling, full of rest, and full of play. I just want us to think about, are these three things something you'd find in a toughened up teen? Well, is a tough teen full of play? It's actually a really serious world when you're tough. It's a self-protective state that you go into. Toughness is there to protect us from a sense that we're in a risky situation. And I just want to bring in the idea here that we've been in a COVID lockdown for many, many weeks. We're just entering out of it here in New Zealand with great caution and excitement. But that constant perpetual state of alarm, what's happening, is the world a safe place? That drives away playfulness. And it brings the armor up, and armored up teens lack true playfulness. Their play and laughter often has a nasty edge to it. It's more about making fun of others and belittling them. It's not true play. True play actually emerges from rest. So is a toughened up teen full of rest? Well, actually tough teens are in the work mode, not the rest mode. They're working to follow all the rules of the peer group. For example, which kids to hang out with and which ones to avoid, which music to listen to, which clothes to wear. The list goes on. And I also want to mention here that in lockdown, anxiety has skyrocketed. And anxiety puts a teenager in the work mode also. So they're working to keep themselves safe from all the troubling news coming in from around the world. Worries over loved ones, worries over their future. What future is there for them, it feels like, with the world spinning into economic crisis. One youth work organisation overseas reported in mid-April that the data is showing 93% of teens are struggling with some sort of anxiety. This can create a sense of hopelessness and desperation. Some kids overseas are feeling like it's the end of the world and they don't know when they'll ever get out of it. Is this true rest? No. All of these worries trigger a real restlessness. So is a tough teen full of feelings when they're toughened up? Showing your feelings to your tough peers is actually the ultimate betrayal of your own toughness. Toughness by definition is not showing all your emotions that you're feeling around the distressing things that you're experiencing. So with the realities for teens of a worldwide crisis, the anxiety of their family's financial situation, their schoolwork that they have to keep up with and catch up, and the pressure to measure up in a peer context, should teens be expected to hold all this in without feeling their feelings? The problem with toughness is that the tough teen has shut down their emotions so as not to appear vulnerable anymore. Culturally, in New Zealand, we value the tough, the invulnerable, and those who seem unaffected by their circumstances. And those teens who wear their heart on their sleeves, who show fear, sadness, and disappointment, they're considered weak, not strong. But the interesting thing is that resilience research shows that those teens who actually bounce back and recover from adverse circumstances are those who've softened their hearts to at least one caring adult. Evidence shows that it's not the tough that thrive, even though they may survive. Losing their feelings means losing their capacity to bounce back. It's the soft who thrive and find the ability to bounce back. So the toughen them up approach encourages teens to push down all their worries in order to not let out their feelings, so they appear tough and look like they're coping rather than looking needy or in distress. It's a lot easier for us to parent them when they're toughened up, to be honest. We don't have to go through all the pain and turmoil of their emotions as they go and come through them. The soften them up approach allows them to find their feelings, to express them and find their way to the other side of them, which allows for true optimal functioning to unfold. So back to what is true optimal functioning. It's being full of rest, full of play, and full of feelings. I don't know about you, but sometimes when we're working with teens who are quite toughened up and quite difficult to communicate with and connect with, finding a playfulness in them is really difficult, especially a healthy, fun playfulness. Finding rest is really difficult. They're often just really agitated and quite intensely engaged with their devices. So I suggest, if you're trying to get into this triangle of optimal functioning, that you start by helping them find their feelings first. Feeling their feelings and expressing their feelings allows them to get to the other side of distressing emotions and find their rest. And out of rest comes play. So feelings can lead to rest, can lead to play, and you've got all the optimal functioning there. So softening up your teen. The focus of most of the rest of this presentation is on softening your teen. First by finding their feelings, because by finding their feelings, their heart begins to soften, and then comes rest once they've expressed their feelings, and then comes play. So this is our formula for tonight: how to raise a resilient teen, soften them up. That's the simple answer. And how to do that: find their feelings, find their rest, and find their play. I'm going to start with find their feelings. So emotions. Emotions are there for a reason. They're there to move us from one state to another. We need to trust in nature's ability to heal us. We need to feel our emotions to be fully human and humane, to be capable of emotional and psychological intimacy, and to be able to feel fulfilled in loving relationships, and to unlock our potential for resilience and recovery. I want to talk about a meta-analysis, a piece of research done recently. Now, a meta-analysis is when researchers take a whole run of pieces of research on the same topic. So in this case, it's teenage resilience, what creates resilience in teens. And then they look at what are the overall themes of this research. What this meta-analysis found from all of the research papers that they looked at was that young people under high stress who showed higher levels of emotional distress than their friends functioned better than those young people who didn't show their emotions. You might say, well, aren't distressed teens showing that they're in trouble, that they're not healthy? It seems that the expressing of their emotions enabled them to cope better. We generally see the expression of a lot of emotion as a sign of weakness. We don't realize that expressing the emotion itself is part of the healing process. You see, emotion is meant to take care of us. All emotion is there for a purpose. But it's not just enough to have emotions. We need to feel our emotions for it to move us to a different state. So I've got a friend I want to talk about who's a community care support worker, and she works as a personal trainer sometimes. And she invites her clients to release their frustration on a punch bag. She said, wow, it's an amazing thing that happens. Some of them get so mad that they hit and hit to exhaustion. They can smash bones in their knuckles, even just being unaware of the pain. And at the end of it, they often collapse into tears. It's a huge release of frustration that's been pent up over years. So the expression of emotion allows a person to move from one state, frustration, to another, in that case, rest and release. But without feeling our emotions, they sit there under the surface and we can get stuck. So we can be hurt, tired, sorry, and hopeful, but hardened up to feeling that feeling, leaving emotion unable to take care of us. So Gordon Neufeld says, for us to feel, for optimal functioning, we need to feel our vulnerable feelings. And I'm just going to bring this slide up large. We need to be able to feel the feelings that move us. We need to be able to feel hurt when wounded. We need to be able to feel tired when needing rest. We need to feel sorry when bad things happen. Alarmed when facing separation, lonely when apart from someone we love, embarrassed when exposed in a negative light to others. And I can tell you as a high school teacher, very few teenagers show blushing or embarrassment of any sort. They're just closed off to that vulnerability. They don't want any other teenager to shame them, so they just cut that emotion right out. They cut out these other emotions, like being cautious when something could go wrong. They no longer feel rejected when not invited in, or frustrated when thwarted. But we need to feel these feelings to be healthy. You see, emotional health is noisy. And it should be noisy. Just bear with me, my notes are going in funny directions. Some teenagers can complain a lot. They get hurt, they feel left out, they feel wounded, they feel upset. These are all typical emotions of the adolescent years. The upset part is the shifting from out of that state. So when we go, oh no, he's crying, he's upset, this is terrible. Actually, the hurt happened, the wound happened already. The tears are just it coming out. You don't need to be so afraid. We haven't understood the importance of these feelings. And this has led me to think about myself. What are the importance of my feelings? Well, my fear, we always think, oh, it's terrible to always be afraid of things, but my fear keeps me safe. Keeps me safe from getting into trouble in risky situations, and it helps me keep my children safe. My sadness gives me the chance to grieve those things I need to learn to let go of, or to honor those who I have lost. And anger, this is an interesting one, not cool, considered cool in general, but my anger gives me the strength to fight against that which hurts me or hurts others. Anger can be a very important emotion. What's the alternative? If we're not going to let emotion out and not let our kids be noisy, we want calm. And our society, our Western society, has this idea that we should control ourselves from falling into negative emotions and get to a calmness. We like to focus on self-regulation, breathing, counting to 10, calming ourselves down. But this is a focus on control, not of letting go, but holding the emotions in. And that means the emotions can't shift us from one place to a better place. We need to invite all of our teens' emotions. Just make that larger. All of them. We're meant to feel optimism, to feel loving, to feel caring, thankful and thrilled. But that only comes on the other side of pessimism, opposition, criticism, disappointment and irritability. There's a dance between these two emotions, and they're both important. The last thing we want is a perpetually calm and tranquil child. I'll say it again, the last thing we want is a perpetually calm and tranquil child. That is the good child, who has squeezed themselves into the shape their parents want them to be and has cut off all the so-called negative emotions that their parent doesn't approve of. In the Neufeld paradigm, we call this the cookie cutter, the emotional cookie cutter. The child creates a stamp, and what's inside the stamp is what they know their parents approve of, and what's outside of it, they pull it all into a piece of dough and throw it away. I can't show that part of myself. My parents can't handle that part of me. It might suit us. It might suit us in the short term to have a good child, but the long-term outlook for a good child can be bleak. Gordon Neufeld says this is not a calmness of emotional health. This is a calmness of repressed emotions. A healthy calmness only comes after the storm. We need to invite all of our child's emotions, both the positive and the negative, for them to grow healthy and happy. There's a quote here, actually I'll leave that large, that I really like from a writer called Cynthia Bourgeault. It says, "For majesty to grow in us, all must come to the light, both the dark parts of oneself that need healing and the light parts that need birthing. If our teens are only allowed to express their sunshine and not their rain or their storms, they're not whole people." You see, emotions help teenagers to care about the consequences of their actions. If they don't have their feelings, they cut off the caring, and it cuts off the caring about the consequences. It resolves impulsiveness to help them mature emotionally, and emotions help teenagers find rest to fuel play. We need to feel our emotions to unlock our potential for resilience and recovery. Coming up next, we're going to talk about what gets in the way of our emotions and in our feelings. Actually, no, not coming up next. We're going to go straight into that. No, we're not. We're going to stop here. So we'll talk about what gets in the way of our emotions next. And I just want to mention to you, I've got a parent retreat coming up at the end of the year. Not that one. Not that one. Okay, never mind. I can't find it. Yes, parent treat coming up in August. And if you're wondering, how do I deal with my emotions? My teenager gets me so wound up, I can't handle it. I can't stay calm. I don't know how to work through this. On my HeartSync parent retreat, we will be talking about that, managing our own emotions first, managing and processing what we need to process so that we can be there to help our teenagers process their emotions. So just keep that in mind. However, we're going to question time now, and I'm going to bring Catherine back up. Just give me a minute. Here we go. Welcome back, Catherine.
Hi, thanks. I did. It was amazing.
And look, hey, I just come back up to say thank you so much. It's been lovely having you all here. Just a real gift to have your ears and your feedback. And I really hope that this becomes a gift to your families and to your teenagers, that it will help you find the way through some quite difficult situations.